Isn't it beautiful?
In Gotham City, Arthur Fleck struggles to find his place in a world that constantly pushes him down, beginning his days as a party clown and dreaming of becoming a stand-up comedian. As Arthur's life spirals into chaos and violence, he uncovers a shocking secret about his past that ties him to the city's wealthiest family, pushing him to the brink of insanity. Stick around until the end, and you'll witness Arthur's chilling transformation into the iconic Joker, a twist that will leave you questioning the line between villain and victim. Welcome to your daily dose of Movie Pill. Today, we'll be recapping a 2019 crime drama movie titled The Joker. Spoilers ahead, and let's dive right in. The movie begins in Gotham City, where we find Arthur Fleck at his company's office getting ready to work. He's putting on makeup because he's a party clown. As he watches his reflection in the mirror, he puts two fingers in his mouth and twists it up and down a few times, while a single tear runs down his cheek. Moments later, we find him on the street, dancing while promoting a shop with a sign. Suddenly, some kids come by and take the sign from him, running away as soon as they have it. Arthur chases them through the city and finds them waiting in an alley, where the kids proceed to smash the sign on his head, and after he falls to the floor, they start kicking and punching him. After work is done, Arthur goes to see his therapist. He laughs for a couple of seconds, and after he comments on how tough things are getting out there, the therapist asks him if he's been working on his journal. He hands it to her, saying that he's been using it as a journal but also as a joke diary because he's pursuing a career in stand-up comedy. I'm sure he'll skip the jokes about how he's getting bullied by kids. The therapist goes through the pages and finds some upsetting words. I just hope my death makes more sense than my life. She hands the journal back to Arthur and asks him how it feels to come to these appointments. Arthur says it felt better when he was locked at the hospital and remembers how he used to hit his head against his room's door. He asks the therapist if the doctor could increase his medication, and she points out that he's already on 7 of them. Arthur replies he doesn't want to feel bad anymore. Once therapy is over, Arthur takes the bus. The kid sitting in front of him is staring, so he starts making funny faces for him, earning him the mother's scolding. Arthur suddenly starts laughing, and when the mother is offended by this, he hands her a card that explains he laughs because of a neurological condition. After getting off the bus, he stops by the pharmacy to pick up his medication before going home. Inside the building, he checks the mailbox, then goes up to his apartment, where he lives with his mother, Penny Fleck. She asks him if they've gotten any mail, and when he says no, she wonders if Thomas Wayne, a former employer of hers, hasn't been receiving her letters. Arthur reminds her that Wayne's a busy businessman and urges her to eat. Well, I'm sure as her former employer, the least he can do is answer her letter. After cutting up her food for her, he joins her on the bed so they can watch the Murray Franklin talk show together. Arthur starts daydreaming and he imagines himself among Franklin's public, where the host hears him and asks him to stand up. Arthur introduces himself and tells him how he takes care of his mother, which Franklin respects, so he asks him to come down. Arthur does so as he enjoys everyone's applause. When he makes it to Franklin's side, the host tells him that he would give up TV and fame to have a kid like Arthur. Then they hug. Back in reality, Arthur smiles at this little dream. The next day at work, Arthur's body is visibly covered in bruises. His coworker Randall approaches, and after mentioning he heard about the beating, decides to give Arthur his gun. Another coworker, Gary, interrupts to tell Arthur their boss is looking for him. Arthur goes to his boss's office and is informed of another complaint about him for disappearing and not returning the sign. Arthur explains he was robbed, but his boss doesn't believe him, insisting no one would steal a sign, and says he'll deduct the cost from Arthur's paycheck before scolding him. Arthur remains silent and smiling, but kicks a trash can in frustration after the meeting. If he fought against his bullies just like how he's fighting against the trash can, he wouldn't have this problem. Later, while returning to his appointment, Arthur shares the elevator with his neighbor Sophie Drummond and her daughter. When the elevator briefly stops, Sophie comments on how awful the building is, making a gesture of shooting herself. Arthur smiles and mimics the gesture as they get off the elevator. Moments later, Arthur is giving Penny a bath. She asks about the letter she sent to Thomas Wayne, believing he wouldn't want them to live like this. Arthur reassures her not to worry about money, promising his stand-up career will take off soon. Penny remarks that comedians need to be funny. A few hours later, after putting his mother to bed, Arthur watches a movie and practices with his new gun. When a song starts playing on the TV, he dances and pretends to talk to a girl, accidentally firing the gun and making a hole in the wall. His mother wakes up and asks about the noise, to which he responds it's just a war movie on TV. I don't know how she buys that there's a war movie with only one gunshot. The next day, Arthur follows Sophie around town and on public transport. In the evening, he attends a stand-up show to take notes, continuing to work on them later at home, where he writes, "The worst part of having a mental illness is people expect you to behave as if you don't." His writing is interrupted by the doorbell and he finds Sophie at the door. She asks if he's been following her, and when he confirms, she jokingly wonders if he's going to rob her. He says he could do it now, making making her laugh, and she tells him he's funny, prompting Arthur to invite her to his stand-up show, which she accepts. The following day, Arthur works as a clown in a hospital, entertaining the kids. During his performance, his gun falls to the floor. He quickly picks it up and asks the children to keep it a secret. However, later that evening, his boss is furious about the incident. Arthur tries to convince him the gun was a prop, but his boss doesn't believe him, saying Randall claimed Arthur tried to buy a gun from him last week. Arthur gets fired and, in frustration, hits the phone booth glass with his head. Of course the kids ratted him out. This guy's constantly beefing with kids. Afterwards, he takes the subway home. In the same car, 3 guys in suits are bothering a young woman. When Arthur starts laughing, the woman leaves, and one of the guys starts singing "Send in the Clowns." As they approach him, they take his wig and bag, mocking his laughter. When Arthur tries to explain and retrieve his belongings, they punch and kick him. This time, Arthur defends himself, taking out his gun and shooting 2 of the men. The 3rd man runs away and exits the subway at the station. Arthur follows him and shoots him on the stairs. With his ears ringing, Arthur realizes what he's done, rushes out of the station, and enters a local park's bathroom. After a moment of panic, he starts dancing. Moments later, he returns to his apartment building, knocks on Sophie's door, and as soon as he opens it, goes inside and kisses her, closes behind him, implying they spend the night together. The next day, Arthur goes to work to collect his belongings and hears his coworkers discussing the news about a clown shooting 3 men in the subway. They try to offer him sympathy, including Randall, whose hypocrisy irritates Arthur, prompting him to reveal that it was Randall's gun used in the crime. Before leaving, Arthur hits the punch claw, causing it to fall and break. On his way out, he alters the "Don't forget to smile" to read "Don't smile." Well, this guy does his smile, and now he's against smiling? Maybe he wants to be the only one smiling. Back in his apartment, Arthur takes his last few pills and joins his mother to watch TV. Thomas Wayne appears on the news discussing the anti-rich sentiment in the city, stating he might run for mayor to address it. He describes the murderer as a coward hiding behind a clown mask and criticizes those who do nothing with their lives as clowns. A few days later, Arthur has another session with his therapist. He tries to express that he feels like he finally exists and is being noticed, but she interrupts him to inform him that the government has cut their funding, making this their last meeting. When he asks about his medication, she can only offer an apology. That night, Arthur waits backstage at the bar for his turn to perform his stand-up routine, with Sophie in the audience. When he takes to the stage, he starts laughing uncontrollably, and his jokes fall flat. After the show, he leaves with Sophie, feeling pleased when he sees newspapers featuring a clown face with news of the murderers, and hears Sophie call the clown a hero. He also notices someone wearing a clown mask similar to those in the papers. Why would someone wear the mask of a killer and endanger himself? I guess he's not the only crazy one. After having dinner with Sophie, Arthur returns to his apartment to find his mother asleep in front of the TV. He wakes her and sends her to bed, where she mentions she has written a new letter. Curious, Arthur reads the letter and discovers that he is Thomas Wayne's illegitimate son, which enrages him. Penny, fearful of his reaction, locks herself in the bathroom and explains from inside that she and Wayne were in love but had to keep it secret, and she couldn't say anything because she signed some papers. The next day, Arthur reads a newspaper on the train, tears out a picture of the Waynes and saves it in his notebook. He then visits the Wayne mansion, where a young Bruce Wayne is playing in the garden. Arthur performs some magic tricks, but Bruce is unimpressed. After asking Bruce his name, Arthur reaches through the gate to make Bruce smile by putting his fingers in his mouth. Alfred interrupts, pushing Bruce aside and threatening to call the police. Arthur tells him he's Penny's son and wants to see Mr. Wayne because he knows the truth, but Alfred dismisses his mother as delusional and laughs at him. Enraged, Arthur tries to choke Alfred, but stops when he sees Bruce. I wonder, if he knew that he could stop Batman from happening, would he continue or not? Because Joker wouldn't be Joker without Batman. When Arthur returns home in the evening, he finds paramedics taking his mother to the hospital and joins her in the ambulance. While waiting outside the hospital, 2 cops approach him, revealing they were talking to Penny when she had her stroke and now want to question Arthur about the subway murders. He tells them his gun was just a prop before returning to his mother's room, where Sophie is keeping him company. After she leaves, Arthur watches the Franklin show on TV, feeling hurt when he sees clips of his stand-up routine being used to mock him. Later, back at his apartment, Arthur sees on the news that people are rioting in clown masks after Wayne called them clowns. Deciding to join the protests, Arthur uses the chaos between the cops and the civilians to sneak into the movie theater where Wayne is. He steals an employee uniform to get into the auditorium and watches the movie while keeping an eye on Wayne. When Wayne leaves, Arthur follows him to the bathroom and confronts him about Penny. Wayne claims Penny was crazy and that Arthur was adopted. Arthur, disbelieving and angry, starts laughing, prompting Wayne to punch him before leaving. I'm sure this man has nightmares about Wayne boys beating him up. Returning to his apartment, Arthur ignores a call from the cops and spends the night inside his fridge. The next day, he receives a call from Franklin's production inviting him to appear on the show, which he eagerly accepts. He then goes to Arkham State Hospital to request his mother's file. The clerk confirms Penny was psychotic and abusive, but refuses to give him the file, so Arthur steals it and reads it in hiding. The file confirms his adoption and Penny's lies about Wayne, and it reveals she had an abusive boyfriend who was later arrested. Devastated, Arthur goes to Sophie's apartment unannounced. Sophie is frightened and asks him to leave, leave, revealing that their interactions were all imagined. The following day, while visiting Penny, Arthur tells her his life is a comedy, not a tragedy, and then suffocates her with a pillow. I guess we're supposed to laugh at this part because it's a comedy, but I'm not gonna because of that don't smile sign. Later, as Arthur prepares for the show, he practices his lines, dyes his hair green, and starts applying makeup. He's interrupted by the doorbell and, after hiding a pair of scissors in his pants, finds Gary and Randall at the door. They've come to visit him after hearing about Penny's death. Randall expresses concern about the police questioning clowns and Arthur's possession of a gun. Arthur responds by stabbing Randall with the scissors and punching him. He lets a terrified Gary leave unharmed because he was always kind to him. Arthur then changes into a new suit and heads to the show, but he's spotted by the cops on the street. He runs into the subway, which is crowded with protesters wearing clown masks. The cops pursue him, causing a fight when Arthur steals a mask. Amid the chaos, the cops accidentally shoot a civilian, allowing Arthur to escape unnoticed when the crowd attacks the officers. Well, I think the mask is unnecessary because he already looks like a clown, but I guess he did it just to blend in. Moments later, Arthur arrives at the studio. While waiting in the dressing room, Franklin visits to ensure a clean performance. Arthur agrees, assuring Franklin that his clown makeup isn't political, and asks to be introduced as Joker. Soon after, Arthur is called to the stage, entering with a dance. He kisses another guest and reassures him that his makeup isn't political, attempting to tell a joke about death. He gets scolded, admits to being the subway killer, claiming he has nothing left to lose. He delivers a long speech about the system failing the little people and accuses Franklin of bringing him on the show to mock him, then shoots Franklin on camera. The broadcast cuts off, and Arthur is arrested. While being driven away by the police, he sees riots in the street with people in clown masks. He calls it beautiful just before the car is hit by an ambulance, knocking him out. A protester driving the ambulance rescues Arthur, and with the help of the others, they place him on the hood of the car. Meanwhile, in another part of town, the Waynes are leaving a theater when a protester follows them, telling Wayne he deserves it, before shooting him and his wife, leaving Bruce alone with their bodies. And that's how the story begins. Back with Arthur, he wakes up to find the protesters cheering for him. He stands on the car and dances, using the blood from his nose to draw a larger smile on his face. Days later, Arthur is in Arkham State Hospital. Laughing during a session with a therapist, she asks what's so funny, but he says she wouldn't understand and starts singing That's Life. The movie ends with Arthur leaving the room and dancing in the hallway, leaving bloody footprints behind. Joker masterfully explores the dark depths of a man's descent into madness, revealing the fragile line between comedy and tragedy in a society that often ignores the vulnerable. Through its powerful storytelling and compelling performances, the film challenges our perceptions of empathy and justice. It's a haunting reminder of the consequences of neglect and cruelty. And remember, if you've ever thought your job was tough, at least you're not a clown for hire in Gotham City. I rate this movie a 9 out of 10. What do you think? Looks like this movie pill is starting to wear off. But don't worry, there's always more where that came from. Tap here to keep the effects going with this next movie, because who can stop at just one? And while you're at it, don't forget to like and subscribe, because your next movie dose is just a click away.